Have you ever walked away from a conversation replaying every sentence in your mind, wishing you had spoken more clearly, more confidently, or simply said what you were really thinking? Maybe you stayed quiet during an important meeting because you feared sounding foolish. Maybe you had a great idea but watched someone else receive credit because they spoke before you did. Or perhaps you avoided introducing yourself to someone who could have changed your career, your friendships, or even your life. The painful truth is that most people are not held back by a lack of intelligence, talent, or knowledge. They are held back by silence. Their greatest opportunities pass them by not because they were incapable, but because fear convinced them that remaining quiet was safer than speaking up. Yet what if the very fear you feel before speaking is not a sign that you are weak? What if it is simply a signal that your brain is trying to protect you from a danger that no longer exists? And what if learning to speak without fear has less to do with becoming fearless and far more to do with understanding how fear actually works? If you're enjoying this kind of audiobook-style content on confidence, leadership, psychology, and powerful communication, consider subscribing now so you don't miss future lessons designed to help you grow into your best self. Now, let's continue, because what you're about to discover may completely change the way you think about speaking forever. Most people believe confident speakers are born different. They imagine that great leaders, inspiring teachers, successful entrepreneurs, and persuasive communicators simply entered the world without fear. They assume these people never feel nervous before giving a presentation, speaking to strangers, or expressing unpopular opinions. But if you study history, biographies, and psychological research, you find a very different story. Many remarkable speakers struggled with intense fear. Some forgot their words during their early speeches. Others experienced shaking hands, racing hearts, or sleepless nights before public appearances. The difference was never the absence of fear. The difference was their relationship with it. They stopped treating fear as an enemy and started treating it as a companion that could be managed instead of obeyed. Think about the last time your heart started beating faster before speaking. Your palms may have become sweaty. Your mouth felt dry. Your breathing changed. Perhaps your thoughts became scattered. Most people interpret these physical reactions as proof that they are failing. In reality, these are ancient survival mechanisms. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors depended on social acceptance for survival. Being rejected by the tribe could mean isolation, and isolation often meant death. Your brain still carries traces of that old programming. Today, standing in front of colleagues to give a presentation is not life-threatening, but your nervous system doesn't always know the difference. It reacts as though your social standing is tied to your survival. Understanding this changes everything. Instead of asking, "Why am I so nervous?" you begin asking, "Why is my brain trying so hard to protect me?" That small shift replaces self-criticism with curiosity. Imagine a young employee attending her first executive meeting. She has spent hours preparing an idea that could improve the team's workflow. As the discussion begins, her heart races. Another manager starts talking, and she decides to wait for the perfect moment. The meeting ends without her saying a word. A week later, someone else proposes almost the same idea and receives praise. Was she less capable? Not at all. Fear simply convinced her that silence was safer than risking judgment. This happens every day in offices around the world. Brilliant ideas remain trapped inside capable people because fear whispers convincing lies. It says, "You're not ready." It says, "They'll think you're inexperienced." It says, "Wait until you're perfect." But perfection never arrives, and opportunities rarely wait. Fear has an interesting habit. It often disguises itself as logic. It sounds reasonable. It tells you that staying quiet is the smart decision because you need more preparation, more experience, or more confidence. Yet confidence almost never appears before action. It grows because of action. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. Nobody waits until they feel completely confident before getting on the bike. Confidence is the result of balancing, wobbling, falling, adjusting, and trying again. Speaking works the same way. Every conversation becomes another opportunity to strengthen the muscles of communication. Every question you ask, every opinion you express, and every story you share trains your mind to realize that speaking is safe. One fascinating discovery in psychology is that the stories we tell ourselves often shape our behavior more than reality itself. Two people can enter the exact same meeting. One thinks, everyone is judging me. The other thinks, everyone is focused on doing their own job. Their external environment is identical, but their internal experience is completely different. The first person becomes tense, guarded, and hesitant. The second appears relaxed, approachable, and confident. What changed? Not the room. Not the audience. Only the interpretation. This is why mastering your inner dialogue is one of the most powerful communication skills you can ever develop. Have you noticed how often you become the harshest critic of your own voice? You may replay a conversation for hours because you stumbled over one sentence, while the other person forgot about it within minutes. This happens because psychologists describe something called the spotlight effect. We naturally overestimate how much other people notice our mistakes. Imagine spilling a few drops of coffee on your shirt before work. You might assume everyone is staring at the stain, when in reality most people never notice because they are busy thinking about themselves. The same principle applies to speaking. The tiny pause you worried about, the word you mispronounced, or the sentence you wished you had phrased differently often disappears from everyone else's memory long before it leaves yours. Great communicators understand something that beginners often overlook. People rarely expect perfection. They expect authenticity. Think about the conversations that have stayed with you throughout your life. Were they delivered by flawless speakers who never hesitated? Probably not. More likely, they came from someone who spoke honestly, listened carefully, and made you feel understood. Human connection is built on sincerity, not performance. Ironically, trying too hard to sound perfect often makes people sound distant. Allowing yourself to sound human makes people trust you. Consider a manager leading a difficult conversation after a project fails. One leader enters the room pretending everything is under control while avoiding responsibility. Another says, "We made mistakes, but let's understand what happened and improve together." Which leader earns more trust? Usually the second. Not because they were more eloquent, but because courage creates credibility. Speaking without fear does not mean pretending you never feel nervous. It means refusing to let nervousness prevent honesty, responsibility, and action. There is another trap that quietly steals confidence from millions of people. It is the belief that every conversation is an evaluation. When you think every interaction is a test you must pass, you become obsessed with avoiding mistakes. But conversations are not examinations. They are exchanges. They are opportunities to understand another person, solve problems, build relationships, and share ideas. Imagine attending a networking event. One person enters thinking, "I need to impress everyone." Another thinks, "I wonder what interesting people I'll meet today." The second mindset removes enormous pressure because curiosity naturally replaces self-consciousness. Children unknowingly demonstrate this principle every day. Watch a young child ask endless questions. They rarely worry about sounding foolish. They ask because they are curious. Somewhere along the journey into adulthood, many people begin associating questions with weakness. Yet the strongest leaders often ask the most thoughtful questions. They know that speaking is not only about having impressive answers. It is also about inviting meaningful conversations. A thoughtful question can reveal intelligence more effectively than a rehearsed speech. Another reason people fear speaking is because they confuse rejection with personal worth. Suppose you present an idea and someone disagrees. Your brain may immediately interpret disagreement as failure. But disagreement is not rejection of you as a person. It is simply part of exchanging perspectives. Every breakthrough in science, business, literature, and innovation was once an idea that someone questioned. If every great thinker had remained silent to avoid criticism, progress would have stopped centuries ago. Speaking means accepting that not everyone will agree with you, and that's perfectly normal. Imagine an architect presenting a new design to clients. Some love it immediately. Others suggest major changes. The architect does not assume every suggestion means they are untalented. Instead, they recognize feedback as part of the creative process. Your conversations deserve the same mindset. Every interaction teaches you something. Sometimes you learn how to express yourself more clearly. Sometimes you discover a stronger argument. Sometimes you simply realize that your fear exaggerated the situation far beyond reality. One of the simplest ways to reduce fear is to shift your attention outward instead of inward. Fear thrives on self-monitoring. You become obsessed with how you look, how your voice sounds, and whether people approve of you. Confidence grows when your attention moves toward helping others. Imagine explaining directions to someone who is lost. During that moment, you probably aren't wondering whether your voice sounds impressive. Your focus is entirely on helping them reach their destination. Ironically, that outward focus often makes you sound far more natural and confident than when you're trying to impress people. This explains why some professionals speak comfortably about subjects they deeply understand but become anxious during casual introductions. When discussing their expertise, their attention is on sharing value. During introductions, their attention shifts toward themselves. The lesson is powerful. Confidence often follows purpose. When your goal becomes serving the conversation instead of protecting your image, fear begins to lose its influence. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding about courageous communication is the belief that one powerful speech changes everything overnight. In reality, confidence is usually built through hundreds of ordinary moments. It grows each time you introduce yourself first instead of waiting. Each time you ask a thoughtful question. Each time you express an opinion respectfully, even when it differs from the crowd. Each time you admit you don't know something instead of pretending you do. These small victories quietly reshape your identity. Eventually, your brain stops seeing speaking as danger and starts recognizing it as something you simply do. The remarkable transformation doesn't happen because the world suddenly becomes less judgmental. It happens because you become less controlled by imagined judgment. You stop measuring every sentence against impossible standards. You stop chasing flawless conversations and begin embracing genuine ones. And when that shift occurs, something extraordinary happens. Speaking no longer feels like stepping onto a battlefield. It begins to feel like opening a door, one conversation at a time, to opportunities, relationships, influence, and a life that was waiting for you all along. The next breakthrough comes when you realize that confidence is not a personality trait. It is evidence collected by your brain. Every time you do something difficult and survive, your mind quietly records that experience. Imagine someone who has never driven a car. Sitting behind the wheel for the first time feels overwhelming. Every movement demands complete attention. They worry about the mirrors, the pedals, the steering wheel, the traffic, and every sound around them. Months later, the same person drives while holding a conversation with a passenger, listening to music, and navigating unfamiliar streets. What changed? Their personality did not suddenly transform. Their brain simply gathered enough evidence to conclude, I've done this before. I know how to handle it. Speaking follows exactly the same pattern. The first presentation feels terrifying because your brain lacks evidence. The 10th feels manageable. The 100th feels natural. Confidence is accumulated proof, not inherited talent. The moment you begin accepting that fear is normal instead of treating it as a personal flaw, you regain control. Fear may never disappear completely, and that's perfectly normal. Even the greatest leaders, speakers, entrepreneurs, and communicators have admitted to feeling nervous before delivering an important speech, leading a meeting, or having a difficult conversation. What separates them from everyone else isn't that they were born fearless, it's that they refused to let fear make their decisions. They understood a simple truth that many people spend years trying to learn. Confidence is not the reward you receive before taking action. Confidence is the reward you earn because you took action. Every conversation becomes practice. Every presentation becomes experience. Every uncomfortable moment becomes another step toward becoming the person you want to be. As you leave this lesson, remember that your voice is far more valuable than you realize. There are ideas only you can share, questions only you can ask, and perspectives that only you can bring to the table. The opportunities you dream about, a promotion, a stronger relationship, a successful business, new friendships, or the chance to inspire others, often begin with a single sentence spoken at the right moment. Don't wait until you feel completely ready, because perfect confidence rarely comes first. Instead, let confidence grow naturally through action. Speak even when your voice shakes a little. Ask the question you're afraid to ask. Share the idea you've been keeping to yourself. Volunteer for the presentation. Start the conversation. With every small act of courage, your mind learns that speaking isn't something to fear, it's one of your greatest strengths. Think about the people you admire most. Chances are, they weren't remembered because they never made mistakes. They were remembered because they had the courage to express what mattered. Every influential leader, every inspiring teacher, every successful entrepreneur, and every respected professional has experienced moments of self-doubt. Yet they chose to move forward anyway. They understood that growth always begins outside the boundaries of comfort. The first speech may feel intimidating. The first interview may be nerve-wracking. The first difficult conversation may leave your heart racing. But the second becomes easier, the third feels more natural, and eventually what once frightened you becomes part of who you are. Remember, people aren't searching for perfect speakers. They are searching for people who are genuine, thoughtful, and sincere. They don't expect flawless words, they want authentic communication. The conversations that leave the deepest impact are rarely the most polished. They're the ones filled with honesty, clarity, and genuine human connection. A person who speaks from experience will almost always connect more deeply than someone trying to sound impressive. Real confidence isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention or dominate every conversation. It speaks with calmness, listens with patience, and communicates with purpose. Never underestimate the ripple effect of using your voice. One thoughtful question can open the door to an opportunity you never expected. One honest conversation can repair a relationship that has been damaged for years. One presentation can change the direction of your career. One encouraging sentence can give someone else the confidence they desperately needed. We often think our words disappear the moment they are spoken, but in reality, they can stay with people for years. A kind comment, a bold idea, or a moment of encouragement can shape someone's future in ways you'll never fully know. There will still be days when fear returns. There will be moments when you question yourself before entering an important meeting or speaking to a large audience. That's okay. Confidence isn't a permanent state you achieve once and keep forever. It's a habit you strengthen through repeated action. Whenever fear appears, don't see it as a signal to stop. See it as a reminder that you're about to grow. Every challenge is another opportunity to prove to yourself that you're stronger than your doubts. From this day forward, make one promise to yourself. Never allow fear to speak louder than your own voice. Choose progress over perfection, courage over comfort, and action over hesitation. Every time you decide to speak instead of staying silent, you're rewriting the story you've been telling yourself for years. Little by little, conversation by conversation, you'll stop seeing yourself as someone who struggles with confidence and start becoming someone others naturally listen to, respect, and trust. One day, you'll look back and realize that the biggest turning point in your life wasn't the day fear disappeared. It was the day you stopped waiting for it to disappear. It was the day you raised your hand, shared your opinion, introduced yourself, asked the difficult question, or stood before an audience despite the uncertainty in your mind. That single decision began changing the way you saw yourself. It taught you that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing to act in spite of it. So as you move forward, remember this simple truth. Your voice is one of the most powerful tools you'll ever possess. It can inspire, persuade, comfort, educate, lead, and create opportunities that silence never will. Don't hide your ideas because they aren't perfect. Don't wait for confidence to arrive before you begin. Begin first, and confidence will follow. Trust yourself enough to speak. Trust your experiences enough to share them. Trust that every conversation is another chance to grow into the communicator, the leader, and the person you're capable of becoming. The world has never been changed by people who remained silent because they were afraid of making mistakes. It has always been changed by ordinary people who chose to speak despite their fears. Today, that choice belongs to you. So take a deep breath, lift your head, believe in the value of your voice, and step into every conversation with purpose. Because your future won't be shaped by the fears you avoided, it will be shaped by the words you had the courage to speak. And that is how you truly learn to speak without fear.